Hi everybody, welcome to the DeYoung Properties Federal Reserve Interest Rate Watch Party. We are here at the DeYoung Sereno Model Homes at Tesoro Viejo, this beautiful master plan just north of Fresno off of 41. And we are excited to have you join us today. I'm Ryan DeYoung, president of DeYoung Properties, and I'm joined by the lovely Elizabeth Cabral, our loan officer with DeYoung Mortgage, and the fantastic Tim O'Hare with DeYoung Mortgage as well. We are so excited to have you join us today. We have so many things to dive into with the federal interest rate possibly being adjusted down today with their big announcement. We can't wait to educate everyone on what does that mean? What are the federal interest rates? How does that affect you and the potential for purchasing a new home? On top of having these amazing people here joining us today, we have a few special guests you will not want to miss. We'll talk a little bit about their current economy, some things to know about their current economy, as well as what it's like purchasing a new home as well. Okay, so we have a great first topic to dive into here. Timmer. Timmer is Tim's nickname. We all just lovingly call him Timmer, so it's just a natural reaction here.
Hi.
So explain to me what interest rates, if they do drop, and how that affects the purchasing power for our customers.
A great deal, actually, because if you look at kind of the history of time of interest rates, let's go back a year. Last year, rates were about 7.6% this time last year. Right now, we're at about 6.25%. So if we're looking at what is your purchasing power, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a big reduction.
Big reduction in the actual monthly mortgage payment for
Right.
the borrower,
Yes.
or maybe more home. Maybe they qualified for a different amount last year, but they're going to qualify for a lot more this year.
Yes, very interesting.
Yeah, so.
Well, and then on top of that, I know when you're purchasing, with the timing of when you want to lock that rate, what does that look like? How does that play into all this as well? I don't know if either one of you have a topic on that, talking point.
Yeah, well, it depends on when the home's going to be finished.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're looking at a new build home, you're looking at construction time between 6 and 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually look at locking in your interest rate somewhere around 45 to 60 days outside that close of escrow.
Okay.
So with the feds, hopefully with this rate reduction that's going to happen, we're not locking in today, but that rate might even decrease even further beyond the quarter that we're expecting right now. Maybe it's going to be a half or maybe even further.
Right, and certainly the trend right now is that rates do seem to be going down. They have been going down. We do suspect that they will continue to go down for some time here. Not sure how far into the future that will continue to happen, but with that in mind, locking in that rate at the very end of the purchase in this current moment is something that I think customers can really take advantage of, because
Absolutely.
in the past when rates were going up, you wanted to lock the rate really, really early on.
Yeah.
And we're in the opposite situation now. Whereas if you purchase now and you lock that rate in later on when the rates are coming down, it's almost the perfect timing right now to purchase.
Well, not only that, but you're also locking in the purchase price at a less amount,
exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of statistics to get into on that about why right now is a very unique time to purchase because of where sales prices are at and where we're at with interest rate cycle. But yeah, any other talking points, Liz, to think about with interest rates and how it's affecting your customers?
Yeah, so our interest rates, like Tim mentioned, they are set between a time span of 15 days, 30 days, 45 days. And the closer you are to closing, the better rate or the cost or credit that you can get for that rate. So right now we're helping our buyers in educating them about that process, and also letting them know, hey, if you wait just a little bit longer, you'll probably get that better rate.
Right. Yes. It's a very unique time. And I have a couple of other special guests that I cannot wait to talk about this with. When we talk about interest rates, that's sometimes a bit intimidating. You don't know exactly what that means for you when you're purchasing a new home. So, Liz, do you have any real life examples that we can talk about, in terms of how this is affecting customers?
Certainly. We had a home buyer that purchased a home about a year ago today, and his rate at the time when he bought was at peak high, which meant he got like it was over a 7% interest rate. If he bought that same home today, he'd probably be in right around the 5.875, 6%, which for him would have been a $400 savings, which it's a huge savings for somebody that is conscious on their budget, or even for qualifying purposes, it's huge.
Right. And something we'll get into in a little bit is our DeYoung incentives, and that can obviously go towards things like closing costs, personal selections within the home, but also more importantly, oftentimes it can go towards buying your rate down. Any talking points in terms of how buying your rate down may affect a customer?
Absolutely. When the builders or a seller in general gives credit towards their closing costs or whatever, if there's money for buying down the rate, you can buy it down as much as 2-3 points, and you're saving $200-300. So it's huge savings.
Yeah. Well, some big announcements to come. I cannot wait to hear what the Federal Reserve actually does today. Now we're going to go to an interview that I had with Brian Ullman with the Ford Financial Group. I think you'll truly enjoy this segment. Take a look. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. This is an exciting day, and I'm so happy to share this with you.
Well, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me to join you guys.
Our pleasure. So give our viewers a little bit of background, who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, my name is Brian Ullman. I'm a financial advisor and certified financial planner and a managing partner at Ford Financial Group, which is an independent advisory firm in the Central Valley.
Awesome. Okay, so maybe let's just start, taking a step back, big picture. Why are we at this moment in time? What's the background?
Yeah, so really we have gotten here because the economy and inflation has started to cool. But if we want to rewind a little bit, I think we can go all the way back to COVID. So about 4 years ago, we shut down the economy for a healthcare scare, right? And one of the ways that our government and the Federal Reserve responded to that was by stimulating the economy. So with stimulus checks, lowering interest rates, and frankly, printing money. And through those efforts, we were the beneficiaries of inflation. If we printed money and didn't have inflation, we would have to throw out all the economics textbooks. So the inflation part wasn't too big of a surprise. So the way the Federal Reserve responds to inflation is one of the ways they respond is by raising interest rates. And so interest rates went on a tear and climbed really quickly and really far, much further than they've been in maybe the last 15 so years. Probably they haven't been really this high for this long since before 2008. And so we have been higher than where we are now in our history, certainly. But there are a lot of people who don't remember having interest rates be this high. And they've been this way for a little while now.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. And if you look back over the last 30 to 50 years, the average interest rate is around 6 to 8%. But people who are younger probably were not accustomed to that. I mean, a long time ago, they were even much higher than that. So rates, they definitely shot up into that, what you would call quote unquote average, but that's still quite high in comparison to what we're all certainly used to.
Yeah, it wouldn't be hard to find somebody. If you're in your 20s, you could ask your parents and they'd tell you what their interest rates were on their houses in the late 70s and early 80s. And they're talking numbers in the teens, high teens even. And of course, we're not there. We're not going back there. And interest rates have gone. I think the really interesting part of what's gone on here recently is that rates went up quickly. Before 2008 and even the late 90s, we would have these step increases of 0.25% every couple of months. This was much faster. And in response to inflation being worse than what the Federal Reserve expected. And so they were taking kind of emergency actions here. And that led us to having a federal fund rate of somewhere between 5.25%, 5.5%, somewhere around there.
Right. So we take that and we shift from the bad news to, I'll call it the good news. We're in a better spot now. Sure. Inflation is much more under control. And the expectation is today that the Fed's going to reduce rates. That may not happen, but that's the expectation that will possibly happen. Sure. And with that in mind, mortgage rates have already reacted to that. And that rates for purchasing a new home, those are already come down even before this has happened.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to see, regardless of what's going on, the Federal Reserve, regardless of what happens today, and I think we're pretty convinced that the Federal Reserve is going to cut rates in some way. But regardless of that, the Fed chair has said, they said a year ago, more than a year ago now, that they've done raising rates, and they haven't raised rates in more than a year. And now they've explicitly said they're going to start cutting rates. The question simply is when and by how much. And so rates are headed in that direction. And so it's no surprise markets react, whether it's markets that influence mortgage rates, housing markets, the stock market even reacts and bakes in this news before it actually comes to pass.
Right.
And so it's not a terrible surprise that we're seeing mortgage rates begin to fall already.
I was listening to a webinar from a home building economist called Zonda. They're internationally well known. Mm-hmm. And they had interesting statistics. Once the Fed starts dropping rates,
the mortgage rates about 6 months after are on average 0.6% below where they were when they started dropping. So that means if they've already come down,
Yep.
and the expectation is they're going to keep going down, at least for 6 months is that estimation. That's when you get
Sure.
that reactionary time period.
Yep.
Any thoughts in terms of that? And
Yeah, I think it oftentimes it's not about what's going on at the very moment. It is where the trend is headed. And so it
Right.
doesn't surprise me. This is the beginning of this next chapter, I think a lot of us believe.
Right.
Futures markets are pricing in a full percent cut by the Federal Reserve by the end of this year. Now, what form will that take? I don't know, 1/4% here and 0.5% there, but a full percent by the end of the year. And so it shows that you're trending in that direction. I think there's some expectation of another full percent rate cut next year. So the statistic that you cited here doesn't surprise me at all because it all points in the direction of the trend, which is lower rates.
Right. The one interesting thing that was at first a little curious, but it makes sense that you get the biggest reaction to mortgage rates and pretty close to when it originally starts happening. So it was the first 6 months had that big 0.6% drop. After that, it kind of stayed about that place. Now, again, they've already come down to quite a bit already. So,
Sure.
you'd expect rates to, within the next 6 months, to look really good.
Yeah, I think they're going to look better every quarter, I think is
Right.
what we're looking at here.
Right.
Some of the worries, what is it the Federal Reserve reacting to? At this point, the Federal Reserve period has two jobs. One is price stability and one is full employment. And the labor market has been tight as it's ever been. And so they could focus entirely on price stability, which is to say battling inflation. Well, the job market has softened up a little bit. We have 4.3% unemployment right now, or 4.2% from the last reading. That's still below the historical average since 1960 of about 6%. So that's pretty good. But unemployment has been trending a little bit higher. So it was about 3.5% a year ago, and now we're kind of trending towards 4.5%. So the Federal Reserve has to take a look at this and say, okay, we feel like we have price stability under control or under better control, but we can't just eye one thing. And so now all eyes are on the labor market, what's going on with the economy. And I think they're going to continue to reduce rates because they don't want us to have a hard landing coming off of inflation or anything like that. And so you're going to get these rate cuts coming pretty steadily. I don't know if they're going to cut 50 basis points or 0.5% over and over. I think we'll probably see a steady decline in rates. And you're going to see that also in the 10-year Treasury rates, which flows straight through to mortgage rates.
Well, okay, so you have two questions I wanted to ask you right in that paragraph there.
Sure.
First, how does the Fed rate affect mortgage rates? So let's try to explain that for our potential customers.
Yeah, so the Federal Reserve rate isn't a one-for-one. The Fed, I think there's some confusion about who the Federal Reserve even is. It's our central bank. It's not even the Feds like we think of the federal government. But they set overnight lending rates between banks and between their reserves to banks. And so a couple of things go on here. It influences short-term interest rates, which then trickle down to longer-term interest rates like a 10-year or a 30-year note. But it also, the conditions that cause the federal fund rate to go down are the same kind of conditions that cause mortgage rates to go down. And so even though there isn't a one-for-one causation here, there's correlation. There absolutely is correlation.
Right.
And so what's going on with Fed fund rates affects a 10-year Treasury, which in 10-year Treasury rates really directly affect mortgages.
Right. And that's why you're already seeing them coming down, and we expect them to continue going down.
Yep.
Okay. And then my second question is,
Sure.
What do you think the Fed's going to do? Are we at a 0.25, 0.25 or a 0.5? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 1/4%. I think it's
Okay.
going to be a 1/4%. The Federal Reserve is a lot of things, but early they are not. In fact, they're usually late. I think they want to. I don't think they want to use all of their ammunition in the first go round.
Right.
And so I think we'll probably see a 1/4% rate cut here. It wouldn't surprise me if we got a 0.5% rate cut later this year or early next year, but I think that would probably come along with a really softening economy and unemployment rates rising.
Yeah.
And so unless we saw some real economic deterioration, I think we'll probably see a 1/4% in September, a 1/4 in November, 1/4 December.
Yeah.
So maybe not the 1% that's being priced in, but also keep in mind, this is the start of something. This isn't the show here. This is the start of it. the first pitch, if you will. And so
Right.
we've got another at least 18 months to talk, you and I and everybody else, about how much more are they going to cut? How fast are they going to cut? Keep in mind, the Federal Reserve can also cut in between meetings. And so if there are in between meetings and is some really bad economic data and they need to be reactive to it, they can cut in between their meetings. We don't have to wait for these September, November, December meetings.
Right. And the good news is we're not seeing anything that's terribly bad. So that is a positive sign.
Right.
It does indicate that we're going in a good direction and that rates should come down, that there isn't anything drastic right there, right on the horizon from what we see at this point.
Yeah, no, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. I think this is something just to keep in mind, maybe for 2025 or 2026. But even though the unemployment rate has risen, you can't find anybody that's going to argue a 4.2% unemployment rate is high unemployment, or is showing signs of an economy that's teetering on recession. That's just not the case.
Right. Okay. Another important question: is now a good time to buy a new home, or is it a bad time?
Well, I get asked this question a lot as a financial advisor, and I would say the most important timing element here is personal, right? It is how do your finances look? How have you saved? How is your budget? All of these personal finance questions that come with buying a house. That should be number one above all else by a long shot. I think as we look, part of that question though is also where are home prices going?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's always a supply and demand question. It's pretty widely understood there's not enough supply, and to meet demand, there's more demand than supply. So home prices are staying steady. And I think as more people are able to buy because of lower interest rates, the likely reaction is that home prices are going to go up. So if you are one of those people who have budgeted and have done the work and saved the money, your credit score is good, I think if you find a home that you love and it works with your budget, now is as good a time as any to do it. Down the road, if interest rates continue to drop like you and I have talked over the next couple of years, maybe it's time to refinance it to a lower rate or something like that. But we don't see, I think a lot of people think they see home prices being higher than they used to be, and they think, there's so many echoes of 2007 and 2008, and that's just not at all where we are right now.
Right.
This is more of a supply demand issue as opposed to speculation on cheap money, which is what was going on in the mid 2000s. And so if your finances are right and you've done your homework and you're ready to go, now's as good a time as any.
Yeah. Interesting statistic also from Zonda. They said that the research shows that when interest rates get to around 5.5% mortgage rates, that sales will double. And if we're in this window right now where sales really haven't quite gone crazy again yet,
Sure.
and rates are already coming down, if you buy a new home and by the time you're closing, handful of months down the road, after your home is built for you, and rates are even better at that point in time, when you have the biggest shift in interest rates, mortgage rates at that point, my argument would be this is almost a perfect time, because you're getting in there before the masses are coming to purchase again.
The same thing works with stocks as well. There's this psychological number that we hold on to for whatever reason. And so if you're buying a home, maybe it's your mortgage rate is going to be 6% or 5% or whatever you're waiting for. But 1/4% or 1/2% different on a mortgage rate is if your finances are in shape and you're ready to go buy a house. That's over 30 years, that makes a difference. But on average, a mortgage gets paid for 10. And then you move or refinance or those kinds of things. And so I think nitpicking on your rate right now, if you're ready to buy a house and you found something in your price range, I don't know if that pencils out. There's optimization and maximization. And if you're trying to maximize, you rarely get what you're actually looking for.
Right. And if you buy now and by the time you're closing and rates are even better, what a great spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think what we're really going to see, you don't see a whole lot of refinancing going on right now because there's so many people with such low rates from before and just during COVID.
Right.
But as we go forward, we will see people buying homes with a 6% mortgage, and then in the first quarter of 2026, it's down to 4 3/4, and then they're refinancing at a lower rate, and it works out well for them.
Yes.
So I think 0.25% on an interest on a mortgage rate isn't going to be the difference maker for somebody, or it shouldn't be if your finances are in shape.
Right. Makes sense.
Yep.
Well, any closing thoughts or advice?
No, I think I'm ready to get this Fed meeting over with. There's been so much speculation for so long. Will
Yes.
they, won't they? I'll be curious to see the economic data that comes through, the September data in October, the October data in November, because we're going to do this a couple more times before the year's out.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Well, Brian is a true professional. I not only know him from a professional sense, but I know him on the personal side and from a volunteer organization. And I've been just an amazing person right here, wealth of knowledge, and truly appreciate you joining us today on this exciting day.
You're too kind. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you having me.
You bet. Thanks again.
All right, we're moving right along here. We have so many more fun and interesting things to talk about here at our interest rate watch party. I'm here with Tim Thatcher, our senior new home professional. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my absolute pleasure. I'm excited about today as well.
Cool. All right, a lot to talk about. So first and foremost, I know there are a lot of great incentives that we're offering right now to purchase, and that plays into this being a perfect time to purchase. So what are your thoughts in terms of how that plays into the decision making?
Well, most definitely. It's almost like a pre-sale before the big sale, right? So we're anticipating the interest rates lowering, and there's a lot of commotion going on there, especially after hearing from Tim and Liz and how much of a positive impact that's going to have on you. But also we have such a great year-end savings event happening right now with lower prices and increased incentives to really help kind of piggyback on the topic that DeYoung Mortgage was saying, in the sense of using those funds to buy down that interest rate. I know Elizabeth had mentioned the points that you can purchase down and how impactful that can be. And we have a perfect scenario right now as we continue to watch the interest rates trend down while prices are still low, to take advantage and capitalize on that natural equity growth that we're going to gain from moving forward on a home purchase now.
Right. So, with the interest rates, you can use them towards personal selections, closing costs, but most importantly, a lot of time is that monthly payment and buying your rate down. And if you take advantage of the current incentives we have with our sales prices event, and you buy right now, by the time you're closing, you're going to take advantage of rates have already come down. It seems like they're going to continue to go down. We'll see what the Fed does here and how that affects interest rates in the long term here. But most likely, you can take advantage of the excellent current environment, the incentives, the sales prices, and the interest rate when you go to close.
Yeah, it's most definitely. Right now, with prices, being where they're at with our year-end savings event, locking in that price right now is pivotal in the purchase process. We want to make sure that you can gain that equity as those rates go down, prices go back up. That's natural growth for you. So I'd hate for us to leave that on the table by just saying, "Oh, we still want to wait, and see what happens with the rates." Well, now is definitely the time to move forward on it.
Right. And, I can certainly say we've looked at the numbers, and over the last 4 weeks, just specifically this time frame, our interest in customers reaching out to us, stopping by our welcome centers, and having a lot of interest in purchasing is definitely noticeably gone up. Most likely because interest rates seem like they're going to be going down here. Oh, yeah. So why is now a good time to purchase? Why are these customers reaching out to us right now?
Well, one of the big aspects is the unknown is almost just irrelevant at this point. We're able to see a steady trend moving forward with positive impacts on the decrease in interest rate. So people are getting a little bit more comfortable with the new normal with what interest rates are. Like Tim and Elizabeth had mentioned, this day last year, interest rates were in the 7s. That's pretty high. Yeah. And people got accustomed to that. When it comes time to needing to move, you need to, or it's more of a need than a want, right? So with this aspect here, knowing that a year ago we were a whole, 2 points almost higher, there wasn't a lot of movement unless you absolutely needed to. Now you can actually better your life and get into a new home, that is going to suit your needs better than what it used to in the past, but also at a lower cost. Right. So it is a lot more impactful to get things moving forward now.
Yeah, and this is such an interesting stat, but and this came from Zonda, who is a very internationally known home building economist, and it said that when you think back to the last boom, right after COVID, there was just such a interest in purchasing new homes, and it was quite intense. And at that point, people who were under the age of 50 that planned to move within the next 5 years was at 40%. So 40% of that group under 50 planned to move within 5 years. What would you say that percent is right now?
say looking at the trends right now, I'd say upwards of 70%.
It's 60%.
60%.
I mean, that's shocking when you think about it. And that's a lot of people. The millennial cohort is an extremely large demographic. And it's really like they're waiting on the sidelines. Not just them, but people under 50 that are home buying age are waiting on the sidelines for that moment that interest rates drop. And when that happens, you can certainly expect interest, people reaching out, the traffic coming to the welcome centers, the amount of people purchasing at the same time. Yes. What does that do?
It's another good point right there. So if we want to kind of play in the past for a little bit and think about what the reality of COVID brought during that time of home buying, there were wait lists around the corner. You know, you had competing offers on a regular basis. It's going to happen again, or it's bound to happen again. You know, so with the way the rates are projected to decrease now, and again, we're seeing that influx of just general traffic, it could very well happen a lot sooner than later with us having competing offers or having wait lists, because that demand has surged incredibly.
Right. And I think that's one of the best things to know if you're considering purchasing a new home right now. If you're one of those people in that group, or even somebody even above 50 considering purchasing a new home, there's certainly a lot of people in that age range looking to purchase a home as well, that now is a very unique time. If you purchase right now, you know, there's obviously interest that is really starting to form. We'll see where it goes here. But with interest rates coming down, that probably means that large amounts of people that need to move within the next couple of years, they're going to start looking and they're going to start purchasing. And when that happens, sales prices start going up. And so it's like you get this perfect moment of great incentives, our year-end home sales prices.
Yep. The year-end savings event, the increased incentive, again, locking in the base price of the home, it's the biggest aspect to this whole puzzle here. And then being able to wait until those interest rates drop even more. We're not locking in the rate today. We're locking it in 15, 30, 45 days prior to close of escrow.
Right.
So we have some time on our side to see what actually happens. So like Elizabeth had mentioned earlier, you know, she was actually able to lock somebody in at a much lower rate and get them a credit back. So why not take advantage of that opportunity that we have to really see or maximize our current incentive for the end of the year savings event?
Right. And I know you have seen this firsthand. You are in the front lines. You're working directly with all of our customers. Do you have an example of a customer that has been really affected by similar situations?
You know, I've actually had customers in the past, you know, want to move forward with the home purchase, but because of the uncertainty in the market, they decided that it was better for them to wait. And they would come back about a year later and they would just come back and say, man, Tim, I should have purchased back then.
Right. Well, are you excited to see what the Fed does?
I am very excited. I can't wait. I know so many people have asked me, you know, they ask me all the time because they know I'm in real estate, you know, what do you think is going to happen? And obviously I'm very optimistic, but we're definitely kind of on the edge of our seats wondering what is going to happen.
Right, so. Yeah. Can't wait. All right, Tim, first of all, thank you for your 5+ years of service changing families' lives for the better and selling them our new homes, and also for the amazing insights today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me and letting me join in on this watch party. I'm super excited to see what happens with the rates. So
me too. Here we go. All right, we are really close. So before the Fed does the official announcement, I'd like to have Liz and Timmer join us again. We're going to have a little bit of fun before this officially happens. And let's make our predictions. What do you think the Fed's going to do? All right, Liz, you're up first.
I think they'll go down about 0.25%.
Okay.
You know, and I'm actually going to side with Elizabeth as well at 0.25%.
0.25%?
I'm shooting for 50 basis points or 0.5%.
Okay, I'm going to say 0.5% too. I feel like they're going to do 25% or 0.25%, but I'm going to just put that out there in the world. And even if it doesn't happen, even if it's just none or, you know, 0.25%, I still think that all this is in a positive direction. Absolutely. It is inevitable that rates are going down here, it seems. So, excellent. All right, here we go. Let's see what the Fed actually does.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Our economy is strong overall and has made significant progress toward our goals over the past 2 years. The labor market has cooled from its formerly overheated state. Inflation has eased substantially from a peak of 7% to an estimated 2.2% as of August. We're committed to maintaining our economy's strength by supporting maximum employment and returning inflation to our 2% goal. Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to reduce the degree of policy restraint by lowering our policy interest rate by a half percentage point. This decision reflects our growing confidence that with an appropriate recalibration of our policy stance, strength in the labor market can be maintained in a context of moderate growth and inflation moving sustainably down to 2%. We also decided to continue to reduce our securities holdings. I will have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments.
Wow. Okay. A 50 basis point adjustment. Wow. That is amazing.
That's awesome.
All right. What initial reactions? What are your thoughts? Well, first of all, we won.
That's the most important thing. No, the most important thing is for the customer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic. I can't wait to get started helping people.
This is going to be very interesting to see how things change. A lot of families are going to be really affected in a positive way.
Most definitely. With a huge jump like that in the beginning, we can definitely gear up for a lot of steady momentum. So definitely hold on tight and get ready for more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think things are just going to start happening now. So let's get ready.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Thanks for tuning in so far. We still have more to come, though. So stay tuned for our next segment. Wow, what an incredible day. And thank you so much for joining us. We hope we provided a lot of valuable information and that you had some fun along the way. Please take advantage of our year-end special savings event and come visit us at our Welcome Center here at Tesoro Viejo. Our Sereno community is absolutely stunning, as well as these model homes, and we would love to spend some time helping you in your home buying journey. I'd love to thank our special guest, Brian Ullman with Ford Financial Group, as well as Tim O'Hare, Elizabeth Cabral with DeYoung Mortgage, and Tim Thatcher with DeYoung Realty. I'm Ryan DeYoung, president of DeYoung Properties, and I thank you so much for tuning in.